All right. Hi there, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Jared, and if you can't tell by the very large map of Illinois behind me, I am obviously in Minnesota. Um, I actually grew up about 15 miles south of Wisconsin, and I used to work in Kenosha for a hot second. So I'm very glad to be with you all today. I'm going to start sharing my screen here and get my presentation up and going. So I will not be monitoring the chat throughout this. I'm hoping that some of my Esri colleagues will be able to keep up with things. We will have time for questions in the second half of this presentation. I think we're going to try and leave about 20 minutes at the end so you can ask myself or any of my Esri colleagues any questions that you might have that come up. So please write your questions down as we're going along. We are going to be covering quite a bit, and I've done my best to get a broad swath of topics. So whether or not you are a new user or whether or not you've been using this for a while, hopefully there will be something in here that you can take away, at the very least a tip or a trick. So if I could get some reactions from the participants, let me get my participant window down here. If you could just give me a check mark, a thumbs up, if you're someone who's regularly using ArcGIS Pro. Okay, looks pretty good. And then if we could get those cleared out, and how many of you you might have seen it, but you're absolutely not using it. You're still on ArcMap. Give me a thumbs up, check mark, reaction. Scan all of you guys here and see if I can get. Okay, yeah. So we've got a mix still, and that's pretty on par with what we're seeing right now. So hopefully after this workshop, you'll be so inspired that you'll get yourself and your organizations using ArcGIS Pro. So a little bit about what I'm planning to cover today. So we're going to kick it off with how do you get started. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the capabilities of the software, what goes into it, and then I'm going to do some demonstrations. So we're going to walk through importing an MXD, what that process looks like. I'm going to go through from start to finish, how do you bring a layer in and publish it out into the web. Going to cover some of the basic editing tools. We will also take a look at what the parcel fabric looks like in ArcGIS Pro. We won't do a full editing demo on that, but just so some of you can have an idea of what that looks like, because it is changing for sure, especially with the latest version of Pro. And then as time allows for some extended functionality, I'm hoping to take a look at one of our pre-trained deep learning models. That's something that's new from Esri, and a lot of people have been very excited about it for the implications. And I think for this group, probably you'll be most interested in it for assisting planimetrics type updates. So hopefully you will all enjoy what we've got to talk about here. So let's talk about ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro was first released in 2015. And for those of you who looked at it back in 2015, you probably know that it's a very different program today than it was back then. Similar look and feel, but in terms of the functionality, I do remember there were some patches there where it was struggling with certain things, but now I must say I have used it every day for the last 4 years, and this latest version that we've just kicked off with, version 3, has a lot of great features. ArcMap has been around since 1999. So when we start talking about technology and computers, that's one of the reasons why this product is so important, is that ArcMap had been around for so long, and it's still around. It's not going away. We're not taking your licenses away for it. It will be there. But it is in extended support now. So that's why we're really focused on having conversations about getting users onto ArcGIS Pro. The last thing that we want is for you to have a product that isn't doing what you need it to do. And we're not certifying new environments for it. So the sooner you can get your workflows over into ArcGIS Pro, the better. It's our flagship product for desktop, so it's getting all of our updates and certifications. Anytime something we notice is going wrong with it, we are fixing that right away. And not that we're still not fixing problems in ArcMap, but it's getting harder to do when you're balancing those resources. So please consider ArcGIS Pro if you have not yet. A quick note about the demonstration. We're doing everything in version 3, which is the latest release as of a few weeks ago. So if you haven't switched over to version 3 yet, you are going to notice a little bit of a difference in the interface. So go ahead and get that latest version downloaded if you haven't already. It is a change break release though, so if you have multiple members of your organization who are working in the same project, just make sure that you're all upgrading at the same time, because there's no backwards compatibility with that change break release. So those are just a couple of notes here on ArcGIS Pro. Oh, and the end of the retirement date for ArcMap is in 2026. For anyone who doesn't know, there is an extended support page up there, or a life cycle page up there for any of your other questions with ArcMap. So let's talk getting started in ArcGIS Pro. Let me get my slide to switch here. So the easiest way to get started in Pro is to just start importing your old projects. You can import your MXDs, your SXDs, your 3DDs, whatever part of that environment you're working in, whether it was ArcMap, ArcScene, or ArcGlobe. It's supported in ArcGIS Pro. And the hope is that pretty much all your maps, your layouts, symbology, all that's going to transfer over, so you don't have to do a lot of work to make it the way that you had it. It should all carry over. There's always a few exceptions. Unfortunately, not everything is perfect, but you can give it a try for yourself and always go back if there's problems. And the user interface in ArcGIS Pro is probably the most noticeable change. I mean, it's a completely different look from ArcMap, but we still have a lot of these same concepts. So just to prime your brain on these terms, we don't have to talk about them in depth right here, but we're going to talk about the contextual ribbon. We're going to talk about views, panes, your contents, and your catalog. So just having those terms in mind is things that we're going to talk about. And we're going to dive into, especially in the demonstration when you can actually see them aside from just a PowerPoint slide. In ArcGIS Pro, another big difference is that we work in projects. The great thing about projects is that they support multiple maps, multiple layouts. You can have different database connections, folder connections, server connections for every project. Every project deploys with its own toolbox. So if you start creating tools for that project, everything's going to stay put together in that project. There's a whole variety of project styles too, which we're going to look at a little bit later. It also deploys with its own geodatabase. And if you don't like that, you can always change it to a different default database. But basically, the goal is when you deploy an ArcGIS Pro project, you have everything that you need. You're not going to have to go ahead and create a new geodatabase. You're not going to need a new folder, a new toolbox. Everything is together for you. And it can also be packaged and shared, which is one of the really great things for people who are trying to work between different environments. Also, if you have done any Esri trainings, some of them come with their own pro projects that are packaged, and everything you need is right there in the training. So it's a great way for us to get that information in and out of machines or between people. Projects also create an interesting opportunity for you to organize your work. So you can think about different workflows and putting them all together in a logical way. And for those of you who have not begun using ArcGIS Pro, it's a great thing before you start to transition to look at all your projects and think what can be put together. And for those of you who are using ArcGIS Pro, I want to challenge you after this presentation to look at all your workflows and ask yourself, are you making the most use of this project environment? One example for those of you who are thinking about ways to organize things, I had a workflow with detour maps. And so every year I just started a new pro project, and then all of my detour maps for that year that I made for our highway department were right there. Really easy to copy and paste a layout. I made, they liked this map for this size of the detour. Let me just copy that layout and put it in, put the new map in there. Very simple, a lot easier than trying to copy the MXDs around and make sure that your data connections stay fit. So there's lots of opportunities in ArcGIS Pro to just do your work differently. A quick note on licensing. How is ArcGIS Pro licensed? Any way you want it. That's the way you need it. Actually, I don't know how you need it, but that can be a conversation with me and an account manager or any other solution engineer. We still offer we still offer concurrent use, single use, and named user. I think is increasingly popular, especially for people who are wanting to make the most use of ArcGIS Pro as a connected client. So moving on from licensing, project templates is another fun thing in Pro. And this is for people who have very specific workflows and you just know, hey, I want, or perhaps an organization format. And you say, you know what, I know that this is what I want when I open a new project for editing. Okay, so then you have an editor project template. And what you'll do in that is you'll set your database connections, you'll set your user interface, and then anytime you want to open a new project to start something new with editing, you can just open that template and everything's configured the way that you like to edit. Or if you have some users who maybe aren't as savvy with getting things organized, maybe the connecting to different databases isn't their forte, you can have a template ready for those users to go that, okay, hey, open this project template and you have everything that our organization feels you should have. It's just one way that you can make Pro a little bit more user-friendly and speed up your workflows. And a fun note, they're also displayed on the start screen. So you just open Pro and they're available to you, which makes things a lot simpler for users. Another way that you can make Pro more custom is by using favorites. So if you don't necessarily need to make a whole template of it, but you have a couple databases, a couple folders that you're always going back to, save it as a favorite. It's a great option for you to make sure that you have access to all that data, and that's saved on a per user basis. So it's not something that your organization's imposing on you. Well, here's this list. It's exactly what you need and you want. Editing in ArcGIS Pro is a little bit different than editing in ArcMap. So the tools are the same. You're going to recognize those tool names. They do look different. They're found in different ways. They dock in different ways. But that functionality is still there, and we're constantly adding to that. And as we keep adding new tools, they're going into ArcGIS Pro. So as you want those new options to be available to you, that's what Pro is going towards. No need to start or stop edit sessions. That's a nice thing in Pro. Do be careful though about which layers you have turned on for editing. But there is less hassle around those editing sessions. Also, topology, the error inspector for your editing, we will take a look at that. That's one of my favorite things about Pro is the error inspector and how easy it is to fix those data quality errors without any editing sessions. So very, very fun features. Versioned data, ArcGIS Pro supports version data in many shapes. So we have traditional versioning, and then it also supports branch versioning. Branch versioning is an increasingly popular topic right now. So if anyone has more questions on that, there's some information on the website. There's also a course on branch versioning that you can take for people who are interested in those workflows, parcel fabric, utility network, or just getting away from traditional versioning. Mapping in ArcGIS Pro is also different. So probably the main thing you'll notice is multiple maps and multiple layouts. There's also increased anti-aliasing technology, so everything's looking a little bit smoother. The hope is that it's refreshing faster, it's higher quality images. Map series, really great tools for people who are looking to, produce multiple layouts very quickly. If you haven't had the chance to play with the map series, there's documentation on the website. The very basic map series are quite simple, but if you're looking to do things like map books, ArcGIS Pro fully supports that, and there's some really great ways that you can export that, and it's a very useful tool. So if you haven't checked it out, we're not covering it today, but please take a look at it. 3D mapping, this is another big capability, putting ArcMap, ArcScene, and ArcGlobe into one program. 3D mapping is becoming increasingly popular, and we have a lot of configurable off-the-shelf web applications to take that 3D data and put it into a publicly consumable format or an organizationally consumable format. So 3D is definitely on its way, as is animation. So don't be surprised if you keep seeing more and more about that. I think that we're moving towards a point where you'll probably see at least one 3D map at most organizations in the next decade, which is really exciting. Styles, something from ArcMap that is still continuing in Pro is your styles. Just because you open ArcGIS Pro and don't see a style you like does not mean it doesn't exist. We have a style website, and let me see if I can open this up here and drag it over to my screen. This is the styles page. So if you're looking for some specific symbology and you're wondering if Esri has it, check the styles page. That'll give you a chance to download it and import it directly into Pro. So definitely take a look at that if you are needing any specific styles. Sharing your work. This is one of the places where ArcGIS Pro really starts to shine as a connected client. And what we mean by connected client is that it's accessing your portal environment essentially by default. If you're signed in, you have a portal, and even if you're not signed into a portal necessarily, we still have the Living Atlas. So there's lots of content, and we're going to talk about that whole thing later. But ArcGIS Pro makes it easy to share your work out, and we are going to cover that sharing workflow here. So hopefully you're all going to be impressed by that. ArcGIS Pro is an integrated platform. There's a graphic on the next screen that will help me explain this a little bit better, but it's meant to be connected. So I think I've signed into 3 different portals in my ArcGIS Pro. You can sign into as many portals as you have. ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise, you're pulling in base maps. So the same base maps that you have access to in your Enterprise and your ArcGIS Online are available in ArcGIS Pro. You can pull in all of your content from your Online, your Enterprise, or just general content from ArcGIS Online, the Living Atlas, demographic data, make use of the World Geocoder. Basically, all of the perks of our system can come together in ArcGIS Pro, and we are going to look at that a little bit. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time on this next graphic because it's so important to what our system has become. A lot of people think about Esri for our desktop product, and it's true. It's been very popular for a long time. I mean, ArcMap has been a thing since 1999. A lot of people have used our desktop. And when it first came out, there really wasn't a whole lot of these other things. But in the last couple of years, we've really just seen an explosion of mobile apps, web apps, and use of the portal. So this kind of goal of ArcGIS Pro is one component of your enterprise system. You can create data, edit data in ArcGIS Pro, and then have it living in one of your portals, and then you can have it pulled from your portal into your mobile app or your web app, and then If you've got data that's in your web app and you want to make changes to it, it's in your portal. So then you pull that into ArcGIS Pro, and then those updates are shown in your web app. It's this whole interconnected system. And we really want people to make the most of that, because if you're paying for a desktop license, then you have, or someone in your organization has access to all of these other capabilities. And those are their own presentations in themselves. And we could spend 2 hours on mobile apps, we could spend 2 hours on web apps. But just know that it's all meant to play together. So if you haven't had the chance to start exploring the capabilities of your portal or our configurable web applications or the mobile apps, just know that that's a way to increase the power of GIS for you and for your organization. The Living Atlas is also another great tool. This is where you can find a lot of our curated content and demographic information, imagery, land cover, and we are going to look at some of the stuff that's in the Living Atlas, but it's a great place to start. I always say ArcGIS Online and the Living Atlas. If you are having questions or someone's come to you and says, do we have any data on this? Do you know anything about this? Search the Living Atlas, search ArcGIS Online, and pull it right into ArcGIS Pro and start exploring it. Bring your own data in, play around with it. Whether or not you're actually going to make use of it and put it into an application, or whether or not it's going to become an integral part of your system, use this as a great starting point to get that information and do base level research, because a lot of people have put work into this that you don't have to do. So it's a great tool to use. So please make the most of it. And with that said, I want to jump into a little bit of demonstration now. Hopefully my Esri colleagues have been keeping your questions answered in the chat. So let me exit out of my PowerPoint here and get over to ArcGIS Pro. So welcome to ArcGIS Pro. For those of you who have never seen it, this is what it looks like. I am going to take a step back though and take a look at, actually I'm going to go into my fresh start page so we can look at those configurable options right from the get-go. Anticlimactic, I know, sorry, I just brought you all in there, and just to take you back out to my PowerPoint for a second. Welcome to the start page. This is where we can really get going. So for those of you who haven't upgraded to version 3, you might notice this is slightly different, but everything is basically still where it was, so don't stress. In this opening screen, a couple of highlights. You have your recent projects available to you, similar to in ArcMap. When you would open it up, you can see some recent projects. I will make a note though, just because you do not see a recent project, you might have worked on something yesterday and it's not in your recent projects, doesn't mean it was deleted. It just means for some reason it might not be popping up here. So do remember where you stored your projects at. Don't rely on them being in your recent projects, but for the most part, you'll be able to see them here. If you had any templates, like I mentioned, they're going to be over on this right-hand side for you. And then we have the Esri templates. So whether you want a map, a catalog, a global scene, a local scene, or you can choose to start a project without a template. This just means that you're going to open ArcGIS Pro to a blank screen. You might want to do that. It's completely up to you, but that's just what it's going to do. We also have a lot of resources here for you. So this is one of the things that Pro, we've tried to understand that people are coming from a lot of different places. So, and not everybody has the chance to sit in on web workshops like this. Not everybody wants to listen through a whole 2-hour video again to find that one thing. So we've tried to make information easy to find in here. And for those of you who are ArcMap users, there's a section just for you. You can get a lot of that information specifically geared towards people coming from ArcMap. While we are here, I want to highlight a couple settings. So I'm highlighting them, and everything that I'm going to talk about in the software, the reason that I'm highlighting it is because I've either really appreciated learning this information myself in my own daily work. I've had conversations with users who uh, had these questions, and I've walked them through these exact same workflows. Um, or it's stuff that I've been reading in our blog posts that people have really responded well to. So hopefully you will take some value out of these workflows and these little tips. So in your settings, the first tab you'll come to is the About tab. This is the place where you can check your version. So if you're wondering, am I on version 3 yet? Come here to the About tab, and it'll tell you which one you're on. It'll also make sure that you are on the latest version. So we came out with version 3, and then we pretty quickly came out with 3.0.1. Very minor change, but just keep an eye on those versions, especially if you are going and using the training, so you can make sure that you are in the correct version. A lot of our trainings will have the option to select a version. So just a note on versioning. The next thing is portals. So I mentioned I have 3 portals that I work in. You could have 20. You may only have 1, but this is where you can start to manage those different portals. There's nothing worse than going into your portal catalog and saying, where is this information, only to realize that you are in the wrong portal. So do pay attention to those portals. Licensing, this is also a good one to check. If you're wondering, maybe you've seen a tool, you've seen a class, and you say, hey, do I have the license to run this? This is where you check that in your licensing section. Let's talk a little bit about some of the options. So ArcGIS Pro is very customizable. It's one of the things that makes it quite popular. But it can also be a little overwhelming when you suddenly look at this list of options and you can change something in every single one of them. So I want to highlight a couple things that you might find particularly useful. This first one is current project settings. A common issue that we have is people who will open ArcGIS Pro, and then the default geodatabase is the geodatabase that gets created with the project. But that's not where you want to save your data to. So if you want to change that, you come in here to your current settings and you change the default database for your project. Next time you open a project, it'll go to that default geodatabase unless you've made a project template, which is configured for your own defaults. So just a quick note on that default geodatabase. This is where you go to change it. Coming into our general settings, Start ArcGIS Pro. This is a helpful one for, especially if you have some less experienced users, or you just know exactly what you want to do. So you can open Pro without any template, or you can set a default project. So if you have that one user who really only uses one project for their editing routine, whatever, you can set their ArcGIS Pro so that when they click on it, it automatically opens the project that they always work in. So just a quick note on that. Application theme, this is a simple one, but it is a popular one. Some people like all their applications to be in dark mode. ArcGIS Pro does have a dark mode. If you are one of those people, you change it in application settings under general. Hope you get to play around with it. It is kind of fun every now and then to switch it into dark mode, or if your eyes are tired because you had a late night. I do appreciate that. All right. Another quick note, the user experience program. If you are having problems and you want Esri to know about it, please participate in the user experience program. We cannot fix the issues that we do not know about. So just a quick note on that. If you're not participating, please do. It really does help our development team. Project recovery. Quick user participation here. Give me a check mark if you have ever had your ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro crash on you and you have lost many hours of work. Yeah, a couple people admitting to it. Yeah, it's a painful thing to admit, but it happens. ArcGIS Pro has project recovery. So you can set how often you would like project recovery to take place. The standard is 5 minutes. And thankfully, not too much can go wrong in 5 minutes. So if you're really concerned about it, make sure you have that project recovery enabled. It is a great way to save you from a lot of heartache when you just lost 8 hours of planimetric updates. Yes, that happened. I know I should have saved it. I believe that's all I want to talk about in the general settings. One other quick note in here, if you have organizational standards, so you know what map, what font you like your map text to be displayed in, you can change that real quick here. I always got tired of changing the text every time I had to open the map, so I set my default to Arial because I make all my maps in Arial. It's just what I like. So if you have that font that you really like, make sure you're changing it in the text and graphics settings. All right, so I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this kind of about section. So we are going to get into an actual project here. Let me go ahead and swing this over. And we're back to where we started. I promise now we are here in the project to stay. And let's talk about importing something from ArcMap. So I have an MXD here, and this is a rectangle, otherwise known as the state of South Dakota. That is a joke. You can laugh at it. It's a rectangular state. Anyways, this is just a basic MXD. I have a couple layers in here, and we're just going to go through the process of importing it now into Pro. So here I am in ArcGIS Pro. How do I get my MXD into here? You'll go to Insert. You will go to Import Map. You will find the location of your MXD. I conveniently put mine in this WLIA workshop folder. And you're going to import it. And then it will import in two views. So you have your layers view. Oh, didn't save my data. Wonderful moment. I actually think I deleted it all. But this is how it will import. You'll have your layers view, and then you'll notice the layouts view will pop up. It'll pop up however you had the MXD named. So just a quick note on that. You will get two views. The layers view will open up right away. And then if you're wondering where your layout went, come in here to the catalog and go into the layouts view. And then as long as your data is sourced properly and you didn't save your MXD into a different folder without storing it as relative paths, your data will be available to you. So just make sure you know where your data is, and your MXDs will work just fine. Okay, so now that we've gotten something imported from ArcMap with a varying level of success, I'd like to go through a start to finish publishing workflow. So the first thing that I'm going to need to do is get some data in here. So I've already set up a folder connection to the folder that I want my data to be coming from. And I'm going to pull that into my map. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can add data into your map. I like using the catalog view. It makes it easy for me, but you can also go to your Add Data tab. If you just want to search your file structure, if you want to add from a URL, maybe bring in a web service and not search through your portal if you've got the link already. This is just another place to add data. You have options, and I think that's the moral of the story with Pro, is that there is a lot of ways that you can do things. It's just a matter of what you feel most comfortable doing. So I brought my layer in here, and I want to start configuring it so I can publish it out into the web. First thing here that I want you to notice is this contextual ribbon. So when I added the feature layer and it's selected, I got a whole new set of options. And this is what we're calling the contextual ribbon. There's not just the toolbar up all the time. If you have something selected that is a feature layer, you're going to get the feature layer options. It's a way of keeping things a little less cluttered. And also, as I say, it's a great way to know if you have the right things selected, because if you're not seeing the feature layer tools, then your feature layer probably isn't selected. So one way that the program will stop you from clicking on a button that's doing nothing. If the options are there, it should do something. So symbology you can access from the feature layer, or you can access by giving it a right click and going to the symbology pane. You have a lot of options for symbology. Probably my favorite is bivariate colors. I think that's a really fun one. So if you haven't found anything that you have two variables to display, definitely give it a try. It's got a lot of fun graphics you can do. These are fire protection districts. So I'm going to want to display them as unique symbols, and I want to look at the district name. So here's all my district names. Now they're all colored differently. You know, I'm really not into pastels, so I want to change that. I normally go for basic random. Great. Now I have all my fire districts ready to go, but you know what? I can't really see the base map anymore. So transparency, there's a couple different ways you can set transparency. You could set it at the symbol level by formatting your symbology, or a pretty common way is just to do the whole layer. I often opt to do the whole layer unless you're concerned about the way the outline looks. And transparency is now set in this feature layer ribbon. So that is a different spot than Pro, but it works in the same way. And if you start getting into a situation where you have multiple layers, you can get into layer blending and feature blending as a way to better symbolize that data for your needs. So I have my layer. It's symbolized how I want. Let's take a look at labeling now. So they're fire protection districts. I want the names of those districts to show up here. So come in here, get my label class ready, and give me the district names. I don't really like that font, so come here. I've got a whole list of pre-selected fonts that I can choose from. Let's just say populated places. Little too big for me. I'm gonna come down here, just make that a bit smaller. All right, now I've got the symbols the way I want. I want to make sure we're not getting any double labels though. So we're going to have to go into the label properties to accomplish that. Label properties is not up here in the labeling tab. You do need to go down into the menu and go to labeling properties. So common one, I don't want duplicate labels. How do you do that? Label properties, position, and then you'll go into the conflict resolution section and remove duplicate labels. This is probably the most common thing that I do when I'm doing labels, is coming in here to resolve those conflicts. So, but there's also all the other options for label properties. The labeling in ArcGIS Pro is much stronger than in ArcMap. So you will see a lot of different options for placement, depending on what kind of layer you're using. Lots of different options for positioning. So don't feel like you have to do it the way you've always done it in ArcMap. You have a lot of options in Pro. So now I've got this layer looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. The one thing I want to do before I publish it out to the web is configure my pop-ups. You can also do this in ArcGIS Online, but I think it's best to save as many steps as possible. If you're going to be publishing it, have all the work done before you publish it. So let's look at how to configure a pop-up here in this layer. I'm going to come down, give a right click, and go to configure pop-ups. So you'll get this pane that comes up, and first thing you'll see is, what do I want the title to be? You can set it to be the same title for every pop-up, or you can have it in this dynamic format. I'm pretty happy with it saying district name, so I'm going to leave it like that. And then my fields. So I don't need to see every field in my pop-up, so let's just go ahead and say I want to see the unit code, I want the district name, and the website. There's my pop-up. Now it's pretty much configured as I need it to be. So I've got my layer now, and one thing I will note, as you might start noticing, these panes on the right side don't close out unless you close them. So if you're unhappy with how they're starting to pile up here, start closing out, your label class, your symbology as you're not using them. Another thing for navigating this area here is there's the auto hide / pin. So if this goes away and you just click on it and then all of a sudden you click away and it's gone again, the way to get that to stay is by pinning it instead of hiding it. Just a quick note on that for anyone who's getting frustrated with why does my catalog or my tool keep disappearing? Make sure you go ahead and pin it. So
hey,
now that I've got,
can I?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we do have one question. Can you show how to change the pop-up title?
Yeah. So you just come in here and then you change it. Right, you come in here. So I've got it set dynamically right now. I could have it set to any field that I wanted to. So I want the text here to show up, or I just want, standard text fire protection. You type it in like that. So that's how you can go ahead and change the title. I'm happy with the dynamic title, so I'm going to go back and change that. But that's how you set that in the configure pop-up. Okay, so now how do I take this out of ArcGIS Pro and get it into ArcGIS Online? Oh, actually, there is one more feature I wanted to highlight before we get there. And that's one of the new features in version 3. So before you publish something out, you may want to consider who can see this. And there is a new feature here centered around accessibility. It's for those who have a color difference, and you can actually simulate what your map will look like to somebody who experiences one of the 3 major kinds of color difference. So you may want to change your symbology based on how that's looking. Oh, I see that someone who has this color difference would view all these as the same district. So just an option for you, especially people in government who are concerned about making things accessible to the public. That is in View and then Color Vision Simulator. So would absolutely encourage you to play around with it before you publish something out for your applications. Okay, so now that exciting tool's out of my system, let's get into publishing. So there are, again, a couple different ways you can go about getting this shared out. The obvious one is the sharing tab. This is where you can share the map package, mobile map package, all of that. I tend to right click and just go to sharing. That way I make sure I have the proper layer selected. It's just one more insurance policy for me. And we're going to share this as a web layer. Now, this is where it's important to make sure that you're signed in to the correct portal. And if you happen to become signed out of your portal, when you right click here, you will not see the option to share as a web layer because you don't have a portal signed in to share it. So that is one way to tell if you've gotten signed out of your portal is you go to share your layer and suddenly you can't share it. So just a quick way to look at that. So I've got my layer here. This is pulling from my metadata here, and I'm just going to make sure that my title is unique. If you go to share a layer and someone else in your organization has the same name, you won't be able to share it. That's a common error that comes up in the publishing workflow. I've got everything pretty much the way I want it. I don't need to send it to a specific folder. I want people in my organization to be able to see it. So let's go ahead and analyze this before I publish it. And one of the things that I really like about Pro is how easy it makes it to fix errors in publication. So this is a very common error when you're sharing things out, and it's that unique numeric IDs are not assigned. And so this basically just means that ArcGIS Online is not going to receive my layer. If it's got a red X, it's not going to publish. So how do you go about solving this problem? Well, ArcGIS Pro does make that pretty easy for you. For a lot of these very common errors, it will actually take you, if there's a bolded line, that's going to take you to where you need to go to fix this error. So I just need to assign those unique IDs. So assign them. Pro will now register that as fixed. If you have any questions about an error, maybe that doesn't pop up automatically, you don't need to try and copy and paste this and search ArcGIS Pro error 00374. It will automatically open the help page for you if that's what you want to investigate further. So ArcGIS Pro does make this really easy for you to get that information. So let's go ahead and publish this. I think this whole process from bringing the layer in to getting this formatted has been about 10 minutes, which really just shows the ease of use for taking it from that desktop environment to getting it out there. And if we were continuing on this demonstration into ArcGIS Online and Map Viewer, we can take this from a layer in my ArcGIS Pro project to the web and then to a web application in maybe another 5 minutes. So if you have not had the chance to, play around with taking things into your portal and then getting them configured into apps, it really is a very quick process. So I'm going to come over here and just take a look and make sure that my layer is everything that I want it to be. I'm going to take here and open it up and see how it looks. So now I'm here in the map viewer. I have the layers symbolized exactly as I had it in ArcGIS Pro. I've got the labels exactly as they were in ArcGIS Pro, and I have the pop-ups exactly as they were. So this is a complete publishing workflow, and now this service is ready for anyone in your organization to use and for anyone in your organization to put into applications. So that is a pretty complete workflow here. And we can dive into any questions around sharing in our Q&A session. But thank you for asking your burning questions. If anything is super pressing, happy to answer those, but I don't see the chat. So thank you for pointing those out to me. Let us dive into, I think we have about 10 minutes before our Meet the Esri team break at noon. So I want to look at editing. So editing, I'm sure that all of you have had to do editing at some point, and I'd like to take a look at how that looks in Pro in the next 10 minutes or so. So a couple of things that you might notice is I've just got a polygon open here. These are political townships. This is actually the county that I used to live and work in. So I have a little bit of a special connection to all of their data. That's why I still use it for these things. Let's go ahead and say, I want to create a new area in this polygon. These could be any kinds of polygons. These could be your tax districts. These could be your townships, as are in this case. I want to get a new area out of here. And there are simpler ways to do everything, but I want to highlight multiple features to you so I'm not taking the easiest path out. So I want to carve out this section of North Great Oak Road here. How do I want to do that? I'm going to first look at the vertices. So notice I didn't start an edit session. I'm in the edit tab. The important thing with no editing sessions to remember is the save and discard button. Your edits are not permanent until you have hit save on them, which is the equivalent of leaving your edit session. So if you're not sure about a change that you just made, don't hit save. So I have a lot of vertices here and I'm not really fond of all of them. So I want to start getting rid of them. This is your add and delete vertices tool, which is a great way to get those little nooks and crannies sorted out. You can take them one by one, delete the vertices, or we have the option to lasso them. So just start drawing and all those vertices are now gone. So I want to finish drawing my shape here. I've got the area outlined that I want to get rid of. And here I am now. I have a blank space. So there's room for a new feature here. Let's go into the Create Feature tool. So I have a couple templates here. Let's say I just want to do Jubilee Township. And now I need to fill this space in. If you noticed in the previous exercise, there were a lot of vertices. So how do I make sure that this is going to line up exactly with what I have? And that's the trace tool. So as I'm drawing this feature and I want to make sure I get an exact fill on this, let me just click to start drawing, and then I'm going to select the trace option. And then the next vertices I lay down, or vertex I lay down, is going to start tracing. And it's going to follow every single point along this line and create it for me. So now I have, and yes, you can copy and paste, you could split it. I wanted to show you create. I know there's easier ways. But that trace tool is one of the most popular features that that I used, especially for some of my workflows. So wanted to make sure I highlighted that. Okay, so now I have my new polygon. But you know what? Actually, I realized I made a mistake. I'm not happy with it. I wanted that to be back in Peoria Township. We're just going to look at merge. Your merge tool looks very similar. You select the features you want to merge and make sure you've got the right one that you want to preserve. This is really, I mean, as simple as it gets. Make sure your features are selected, get your merge in, and now I've got that whole workflow. So you've seen edit vertices, you've seen create new polygon, trace, and merge. And it's all pretty simple. And you know what? All of that got me back to the same result. So I'm going to discard my edits and make sure everything is the same way. So let's take a look at another option in editing, and that is getting attributes. So I've got this township here, and it's called Richwoods Township. Now, if you are looking up here, you might see Richwoods Township has a couple other pieces to it. I want to make sure I'm modifying all of them at the same time. So there's only 4 pieces. I'm just going to go ahead and hold down Shift, get them all selected. And then I'm going to come to my attribute pane. Now I can view the attributes for each one of these individually and change them without losing my selection. But let's say I realized, oh, there's a spelling error in my township. When you've got them all selected, you've got all your attributes or your features selected, you're going to come up here and just make sure you've got the top bar selected, and you can change all of the attributes at one time for your selected features. So I want it to be Richwood Township instead of Richwoods. Apply to all, and now all of my features have that new name. And this works for a lot of different attributes. So anything you're wanting to change, it's very helpful to just be able to do that all in one process. Is there a question in the chat? Can you show the table behind this editing process? I'm not sure. What are you mean, the attribute table? What table are you wanting to see? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can keep typing. The attribute table, yes, okay. So the attribute table, similar to how it is in ArcMap, you're gonna come here and open it up. And then these are the political township layers, and you can edit it. You can edit in the attribute table as well. As long as editing is enabled, just double click, and then you can start editing right in here. You also have the option to calculate fields just as you did in ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, excuse me. I also have the option to select from the attribute table, and then if you want to do that kind of batch editing, you can do that also from the attribute pane in conjunction with your attribute table. There's a lot of flexibility that you have here as to how you want to do this, and what's the most efficient thing for you and the task you're working on. Does that answer your question with the attribute table?
Hey, Jaron, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, probably it's easier than typing. So I was curious to see how the table changes when you did that one single editing for the township component. You're showing that you're saying, I changed the name of whatever you changed. I want to see how it changes in the table.
Sure thing. So you see it selected. I made that modification. I hit apply to it and it changes in the table. And then
Right, but this is for one single record. You're showing 4 records before.
Yep, I can select all 4 and change it for them too. So now I see all the features are selected. I want the name to be Richwood for all of them. I apply that change, and now it's changed in all of them in the attribute table.
Great, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to leave that just the way I had it because it's okay. And then one more feature I will highlight before we skip into our Meet the Esri team is the explode feature. So these are all separate polygons, but I have another township down here where everything's been merged into one. But I don't want them as one. I want to be able to move them separately. And this is a problem I know I ran into all the time where I had to divide things out and suddenly they're still in 2 pieces, even though there's now another polygon between them. You're going to use the explode tool for that. And I love the graphic for it. It really does look like an explosion going on. Select your multi-part polygon that you want to explode. And now you can have 2 different features individually selectable. So that's just a quick note on the explode tool. Really useful thing if you're starting to get into these polygon editing workflows and you're wondering, how do I make it one piece? I just need to change the one. Explode. And then if you wanted them back together, you can merge them back together again. So that is a quick highlight of some editing workflows. We will take a look at parcels after our lunch break. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will turn it back over to the WLIA team to facilitate our Meet Your Esri team. Thank you for all your attention in this first half, and I will see you in a few minutes.